Welcome to Politics for Patriots. Here's your host, the eviscerator of progressive nonsense, the executioner of imbecility, and the grim reaper of BS, Eddie Zipper.
Welcome to episode 80 of the Politics for Patriots podcast. Thank you to everyone out there for all the iTunes downloads. It's been a killer few weeks, so I hope we keep it going. If you haven't subscribed yet, please subscribe to the show on iTunes, leave me a review on iTunes, or just tell Alexa that you want to listen. Just say, Alexa, play the Politics for Patriots podcast. And then Alexa will probably say something like,
"Damn, baby, you have good taste in podcasts."
And most importantly of all, remember that every time you subscribe to a conservative podcast, a liberal somewhere sheds a tear.
A Happy Meal, we'll get you one of those Happy Meals. You got a Happy Meal? Can we get a Happy Meal? Will somebody get you to the Happy Meal?
All right, so this week I'm going to talk about a story in the news that perfectly illustrates why President Trump constantly tears into the mainstream media and calls them fake news. This story is a microcosm for everything that the term fake news embodies. And the story this week is a little different because you can always see the fake news and talk about why it's fake news, but very rarely do you have a control variable. And this week we have a control variable. That's right, people. This week it's science. Now, of course, sometimes the fake news is just straight up fake. I mean, they don't even get the facts right, and they have to correct and retract those stories, because you got to get the facts right. All right, and we saw a lot of that during the giant 2-year collusion hoax, nonstop story that was in the media every day. Right, some examples. In 2017, CNN had an article based on one anonymous source that tied Anthony Scaramucci to the Russians. CNN retracted that story, and 3 editors, one of which was a Pulitzer Prize winner, had to end up resigning over that story. In 2017, Brian Ross ended up losing his job when he reported that Trump ordered General Flynn to make contact with the Russians before the election. But oops, it was actually after the election.
Just a bit outside.
Before, after, seems like a pretty small difference there, but it's actually a pretty crucial preposition in this case. And that's why Brian Ross doesn't have that job anymore. All right, CNN had to correct a story about Donald Trump Jr. I'm going to read you the correction. Correction. This story has been corrected to say the date of the email was September 14th, 2016, not September 4th, 2016. The story also changed the headline and removed a tweet from Donald Trump Jr., who posted a message about WikiLeaks on September 4th, 2016. So the date was everything in that story that made it damning. And once the date was wrong, the whole story was nothing. Okay, and there are tons of other examples of this. This is the fakest of fake news when the actual facts are just made up. I mean, you can't be any more fake than that. That's the most obvious form of fake news. And there were lots more things like that, but I just wanted to give some quick examples for context. Okay, the show isn't about the Russian collusion hoax exactly that the media perpetuated for 2 years. This show is about something else that I'm going to get to very soon. But this provides important context, so you have to remember all of these things. All right, Time magazine, you remember, ran a cover of the White House merging with the Kremlin. Ooh, scary. It was stupid at the time, but in retrospect, given that the Mueller report found no evidence of Trump-Russia collusion, everyone knows this was absurd hysteria. All right, it was a different kind of fake news. You don't have to correct a cover. Time also, if you remember, ran a cover with a picture of President Trump towering over a crying child. That cover was 100% fake. That child had never been separated from her parents at all. Time magazine just used it because it was a crying child, and they were just photoshopping something to make you hate Trump. They did a cover of Trump and Putin's faces melding together. Oh, so scary. I canceled my subscription to Time Magazine some time ago. All right? It's a big fake news machine. But think about the effect that all of those stories has. ABC News reports a wrong fact. How many people really watch ABC News? Not that many. So what does it matter if ABC News reports a wrong fact? But that's not how the media works. ABC runs with the story, and instead of independently confirming the story, all the other media outlets report that ABC is reporting that X happened. This is a nuance that is lost on most people. Most people don't consider the anonymous sourcing. They don't consider the circular sourcing. They don't consider the fact that you are not actually reporting the story, right? So the news story CNN might be reporting is ABC is reporting that X happened. Now let's talk to pundits about X. Does X prove that orange man bad? And of course, you already know what all the pundits say.
Oh!
Yep.
And then what happens? People start to talk about the story on Twitter, and the story becomes truncated. It morphs from ABC is reporting X into X happened. Okay, and there's a word for that truncation, for that process of the story morphing. And that process is called gossip. Somebody told ABC that X happened, and ABC told me. Oh, really? Who told ABC? Oh, they wouldn't say. Then how do you know that it's true? Well, to be honest, we don't really care if it's true because orange man bad, am I right?
Yep.
Okay, to squeeze it into a nutshell, the mainstream media essentially operates like this.
My best friend's sister's boyfriend's brother's girlfriend heard from this guy who knows this kid is going with the girl who saw Ferris pass out at 31 Flavors last night.
That's Christy Swanson in Ferris Bueller's Day Off delivering fake news to the teacher. Ferris was playing hooky. He was just skipping school. He didn't pass out at 31 Flavors. All right, so now let me get to what happened this week. I already sort of foreshadowed. We have a situation. We have a control variable. We're going to show how fake the fake news is, even when they have the facts right. So let me get into this. The media is an anti-Trump echo chamber. And sometimes they have the facts wrong, and they have to make corrections, and people lose their jobs. But most of the time, they aren't fake news because the facts are wrong. They're fake news because of how they present facts, and which facts they choose to present. They should be unbiased. They are not. They should be objective. They are not. They should be balanced. They are not. That's where the real fake news is. Or at least that's where a majority of the fake news is. Example, if you are CNN and you report that Brian Ross is reporting that X happened and then all the pundits opine on X, you didn't get any facts wrong. There's no correction that CNN has to make in that case because it is 100% true and factual that ABC reported that X happened. It's X that wasn't true, so only ABC is responsible for that. So you don't have to issue any correction even though you perpetuated what was definitely 100% fake news. All right, you can also take facts and use them in deceitful ways, and that brings us to this week's story, which I told you is a microcosm for what our pathetic mainstream media overlords have become. Lots of outlets are running stories that the Trump administration is putting children into a former Japanese internment camp. And that just sounds bad. What is going on here? Here's a tweet from The Hill. The Hill tweeted the story out. Just in, Trump administration to send migrant children to former Japanese internment camp. Report. That sounds horrible, but only because it is designed to sound horrible. All right, Time Magazine. I really despise Time Magazine. Their headline says, Trump administration to hold migrant children at base that served as Japanese internment camp. There's a Washington Post headline that reads, Geronimo and the Japanese were imprisoned there. Now Fort Sill will hold migrant children once again. Ari Melber, who is a guy with a show on MSNBC, did a story with the Time headline, and it's the Time headline that I just read, which says, Trump administration to hold migrant children at base that served as Japanese internment camp. Okay, Ari Melber did a story with the Time headline superimposed over a really scary looking black and white picture of a Japanese internment camp. And he had George Takei on, who was put in one of these internment camps as a kid. And George Takei was there to talk about how evil Trump is because he's putting kids in the internment camp. Okay, so this story is being echoed and echoed. Now Cher, you know who Cher is, the singer, she tweeted a still shot of the Time headline over the scary picture from Ari Melber's show, and she tweeted this in all caps, just so you know she's shouting, said this would happen and people laughed. Never thought the first to be imprisoned would be innocent children with no parents, no power. More marginalized people will be imprisoned. If Dems don't win, democracy is coffin emoji. If Dems do circling fire squad, American flag emoji is coffin emoji. Welcome to chains emoji, Trumpistan, chains emoji.
We're all gonna die! Ah!
Cher has like 3.6 million Twitter followers who will receive the news from her that Trump is imprisoning innocent children in an internment camp and that America is dead if we don't elect Democrats.
My best friend's sister's boyfriend's brother's girlfriend heard from this guy who knows this kid is going with the girl who saw Ferris pass out at 31 Flavors last night.
Okay, so here's the true story on this. There has been a huge influx of migrant children crossing the border. Over 40,000 children this year. These children are unaccompanied by adults. So the federal government holds on to them until they find someone in the U.S. to sponsor the children and take care of them. In May alone, 11,000 children showed up unaccompanied by adults. You have to put them somewhere. You can't just let children roam around in the desert and say good luck. They will die. So the federal government finds places to put them all. One of those places is Fort Sill. Fort Sill is a military base. This military base was also used some 70 years ago as an internment facility for Japanese Americans during World War II. But it is not a Nazi death camp. There aren't that many places where you can house thousands of people at once. A military base has barracks, so it is good for housing lots and lots of people. Okay? So I told you there was a control variable. Here's what it is. In 2014, we had the exact same problem. The exact same thing happened. There was an influx of unaccompanied minors crossing the border. Guess what the Obama administration did to deal with the huge influx of unaccompanied minors crossing the border? They housed them in a variety of places, including Fort Sill. And guess How many news reports back then were interested in Fort Sill's historic context as a former Japanese internment camp? Zero. I could not find a single report that mentioned Fort Sill as a former Japanese internment camp. Not one. So here's the Washington Post, 2019. Geronimo and the Japanese were imprisoned there. Now Fort Sill will hold migrant children once again. Okay, here's what the Washington Post had to say about the exact same situation in 2014. They had no headline about it, but they did mention it. It was way at the bottom of a long article about where to put the children, and here's what it said. GOP lawmakers have questioned the administration's decision to house thousands of the unaccompanied children at military bases. Geez, that doesn't sound like it's going to rile up Cher too much. It doesn't sound like their 2019 headline, which says Geronimo and the Japanese were imprisoned there. Now Fort Sill will hold migrant children once again. Okay, here's the Hill tweet that I read you a few minutes ago. Just in, Trump administration to send migrant children to former Japanese internment camp report. Here's the only mention I could find from the Hill when the exact same thing happened in 2014 when Obama was president. Quote, Fort Sill was one of 3 facilities set up last month to house the huge influx of unaccompanied minors crossing over the Texas-Mexico border. Compare that with a headline that says, just in, Trump administration to send migrant children to former Japanese internment camp. I read you the Time magazine headline that led to the MSNBC segment that Cher stole the picture from. That Time headline was, Trump administration to hold migrant children at base that served as Japanese internment camp. Here was Time magazine's headline on the situation in 2014. Obama urges Congress to approve $4 billion in funds for immigration crisis. I'm going to read to you from that story. President Barack Obama called on Congress to swiftly approve nearly $4 billion in supplemental funding to deal with the influx of unaccompanied minors at the southwest border Wednesday, saying lawmakers need to set aside politics to solve the problem. The contrast is just absolutely astonishing. Here's a little bit more. Are we more interested in politics, or are we more interested in solving the problem? Obama said in a statement. Obama said the challenge is Congress prepared to act to put the resources in place to get this done? The contrast is simply not even believable. The Time headline. To stay consistent, it could say that the majority party has changed, but Congress remains unable to reach a deal on how to deal with this, or something like that. But no. This happens when Obama is president, and the story is, mild-mannered Clark Obama takes off his glasses, dons his cape, and tells Congress to act. But when Trump is president, the story is, supervillain president twists his mustache as he rounds up children and puts them in internment camps. It's totally obvious and shameful, pathetic media bias. It is fake news. There's no other way to describe it. It shows you what a crappy echo chamber the mainstream media is. One garbage reporter comes up with the internment camp talking point, and then they're all parroting it. Do you think they all came up with this talking point independently of each other? No. They're all pathetic plagiarists that see a headline that looks bad for Trump, and they echo that headline. Sure, They change it enough that it's not plagiarism, but they just steal the idea that's still plagiarism. What do the headlines do? They cause activists to melt down and twist the story into Trump sounding like he is some kind of a Nazi doing crazy Nazi things. Why wasn't Fort Sill a Japanese internment camp in 2014? Google it. Do a news search for the entire year 2014. You won't find a single story anywhere that made that connection. Now, like every mainstream media outlet is making that connection. This pathetic anti-Trump story being echoed everywhere, like I said before, is a microcosm of how the mainstream media does business. They are selling a product, and that product is Orange Man Bad. How else can you explain the difference in the coverage between now and when the exact same thing happened in 2014? There is no other explanation. In 2014, it was shame on Congress for not passing whatever Obama wants them to pass to solve the problem. In 2019, it's shame on Trump for putting children in a Japanese internment camp. Trump is right to call these people fake news. He is right to lash out at them. Republican politicians have been scared to do that for years because they desperately want the media to love them. Dear mainstream media, if you want President Trump to stop insulting you, I have some advice. Suck less. Alright, that's it. I hope you enjoyed the show today. Don't forget to subscribe on iTunes. Leave me a review on iTunes. That's it for today. I'm out of here.
My best friend's sister's boyfriend's brother's girlfriend heard from this guy who knows this kid is going with the girl who saw Ferris pass out at 31 Flavors last night.
You just listened to Politics for Patriots with Eddie Zipper. Email the show at patriots@eddiezipper.com and please subscribe.